Hello everybody and welcome to my YouTube channel, What's on the Comic Book Rack. This YouTube channel is about my personal comic book collection and my personal comic book journey. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Alex the Comic Hoarder, who not only inspired me to make a top 5 key comics in my collection video, but also to inspire me to actually start a YouTube channel about comic books. So not only are we going to check out what's on the rack, we're going to check out the top 5 key comics in my collection. So let's get started. Starting off with number 5 on the list is Uncanny X-Men number 121. Now, what's the key significance of this comic book? What's the first full appearance of Alpha Flight? First full appearance of Sasquatch, Shaman, Snowbird, Northstar, and Aurora. What's the key significance of this comic book in my collection? This is the very first 9.8 comic book I ever bought. It happens to also be the most expensive comic book I've ever bought. So what is another key significance of this comic book in my collection? It's the fact that I love Alpha Flight. So I was willing to spend that much money to buy the first full appearance of Alpha Flight. I'm a big John Byrne fan. I'm a big Alpha Flight fan. So it goes back to that old adage, if you buy what you love, you'll never be dissatisfied, and I'm not dissatisfied with this book. I realize I bought it kind of high. It has since gone down in value, but I still love this book. Could this book be a spec book? If these characters ever appear in the MCU, or there's some kind of rumor that they may appear in the MCU once the X-Men get here, this book could go up, but whether or not that happens or not, I'm going to keep this 9.8. Now, I do have a 9.2 of this comic book. I would be willing to part with this one, or if these characters appeared in the MCU and I could get more money for it, I could part with this one, but not my 9.8. And another reason I chose the 9.8 in the 121 is because I could not afford a 9.8 in the 120. I could afford an 8.0. I bought this one raw, sent it to CGC. I got an 8.0 for this one. I would hope to upgrade this one as far as I possibly can, but the 9.8 and the 121 is the one that's the most significant because it is the first 9.8 comic book I ever bought, and it happens to also be the most expensive comic book I have in my collection. Number 4 on the list is New Mutants number 98. And what's the key significance of this comic book? This is the first appearance of Deadpool. Why is it significant in my collection? This is the very first comic I ever sent off to CGC. Now, I didn't send it off to CGC myself. I had my local LCS have it sent off, had it cleaned, pressed, cased, came back a 9.4. I think this is the first time I went through my collection to try to find something that was valuable enough to send off to CGC, and this was what I picked to send off to CGC. So, number 4 on my list, New Mutants number 98. Now we're up to number 3 on the list. I had a difficult time choosing my number 3 on my list. There were 2 comics I really was struggling to see which one I wanted to put on the list. Those 2 comics are Fantastic Four number 91. Why is this significant? No key significance that I can think of, other than the fact that it was the very first comic book I ever saw. I didn't actually own it, my brother owned it, and this was the first comic book I went to LCS's, started to look for, because I wanted to put this one back into my collection. Like I said, this was the first comic book I saw, so this is the first comic book I was exposed to. Therefore, I was exposed to Stan Lee and the amazing art of Jack Kirby. I, to this day, will always seek out anything that Jack Kirby does. I love his art. So it was a struggle between Fantastic Four number 91 and Fantastic Four number 245. What's the key significance of this? Not any key significance. A key significance to my collection is because this was the first time I picked up a John Byrne comic book. I am a huge fan of John Byrne. I love his art. I love his storytelling. And this was the first time I saw a John Byrne Fantastic Four comic book. And after that, I picked up every single one after that. So number 3 was a difficult choice. So I picked Fantastic Four number 91 and Fantastic Four number 245. Now we're up to number 2. And number 2 is the newest acquisition to my comic book collection. I've noticed that a lot of YouTubers will feature a lot of comics, but they have their favorite characters, whether it's Swaggle Hoss with Darkhawk, Comic Book Investments with the Incredible Hulk, Manhunter Comics with Green Lantern. My favorite comic book character is Iron Man. Now I finally got a chance to get an Iron Man number 1 and a 5.0. I kept waiting around thinking that after the boom this would start to decline. This is one of those blue chip comics that always tick up a little bit every single year. I really wanted a raw copy. I wanted a raw copy because I like to present a statue and a comic book behind the statue, and I wanted a raw copy for it to be able to fit in the little cubbies I have for my comics and my statues. I couldn't find a raw copy. I kept waiting. I said, I can't wait anymore. I'm going to have to pull a trigger. And I pulled the trigger on this 5.0. It presents very, very well. I'm very happy with this purchase. And according to Manhunter Comics, I'm going to take his advice. And Iron Man number 1 collection, volume 1, is an attainable goal. I've got a number 1 now. The only comics I don't have are 80 and below. And I'm going to start eventually collecting those and finish my collection of Iron Man. Iron Man is my favorite character. I own more Iron Man comics, or own more comics he's appeared in than any other character. So my number 2 is Iron Man number 1. Number 1 on my list is Avengers Annual number 10. Now, what's the key significance for this comic book? It's the first appearance of Rogue. But what's the key significance for this comic book in my collection? It's the first comic book I remember buying with my own money. I'm sure I had to cut grass, help around the house, do whatever to earn some cash. And once I earned that cash, what's the first thing I'm going to do? Is buy some comic books. Now, this comic book came out in 1981. I'm 12 years old at that time. But what I distinctly remember about this comic book is riding my bike all the way to the local Tom Thumb gas station and seeing this gem on the rack. Now, this had everything my 12-year-old brain needed and wanted. It was action-packed. It had epic battles. It had spectacular art by the amazing Michael Golden. Guest stars, you name it. It also had my 2 favorite characters, Captain America and Iron Man. Now, there are a lot of controversies about this comic, and one of the controversies is the cover itself. It's ranked and Go Collect as one of the worst first appearance covers ever. I'm going to take the controversial view that I love this cover. It kind of harkens back to a Silver Age style of creating panels on the outside, telling the potential buyer what's on the inside to get them to buy it. See Captain America totally defeated. Witness Iron Man knocked out of action. Observe Spider-Woman's daring midnight rescue. Behold the deadly new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. It's got an XMen cameo, plus a shocking mystery guest. It had everything anybody could ever want. And once you opened it up and saw the amazing art by Michael Golden, I was hooked. I have loved this book over and over and over again. As you can probably see, it's got plenty of spine ticks. This comic book has been read over and over and over again. Now, the cover is done by Al Milgrom, but we do have some good John Byrne headshots here. I like this cover. Now, this is the actual book that I bought when I was 12 years old. I have since upgraded. I have a 9.4 now. I hope that one day maybe I can get this one up to a 9.8. We will see. But I know another YouTuber said that these top 5 comic books are the ones that if your house burns down, you're going to go and grab these comic books. I'm going to grab one, and that would be this one right here. If I only had one comic book for the rest of my life, it would be this one, the very first one I remember buying. So that's my top 5 key comics in my personal collection. Again, I'd like to thank Alex the Comic Hoarder for inspiring me to start a YouTube channel about comic books. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you again on the next video about what's on my comic book rack. Take care.